MademmyifyASMR True Crime. Welcome back, my Mad Hatters, and welcome to MademmyifyASMR, and of course, welcome to another True Crime Tuesday. This is the first video that I am recording on my new phone, so I'm still getting used to it all. Before I begin, I just want to say I'm putting this video out because I felt that it was really important that I speak about this topic, but after this I am going to continue to take a little bit of a break from YouTube and from ASMR in general. The reason for that being just because there's a lot going on, especially with Rossi at the minute. If you've seen my community posts, if you'd seen I'd posted a video a little while ago saying that he wasn't well. We thought he was getting better, but he really isn't. And now we're in a situation where we kind of have to decide whether we want to spend potentially a massive amount of money on a scan, or whether we want to try some really risky medication. And I'm probably going to be taking time off at least until he starts to make a recovery, or we know what's going on with him, just because I've got so much going on with everything. I'm so stressed out with the dog, and I'm sure you can all understand. I just feel like I need to explain him. Maybe a true crime video, especially one about this topic, wasn't the place to do it. I'll maybe do one separately, just like a separate ramble that I'll put out this Friday, but then you probably won't see any videos from me until Rossi is feeling a little better. Anyway, as I said, given the news in America over the last couple of weeks with the overturning of Roe versus Wade and the making abortions illegal in a lot of states within the USA, I felt that it was really important for me as a true crime creator, as a woman, to talk a little bit about kind of why we need legalized, legal, safe abortions. And so I spent the past few days doing a little bit of research, and found a few cases. This is going to be a very heavy topic. There are trigger warnings for talks of miscarriage / pregnancy loss, abortion, infanticide, medical malpractice and negligence. So if any of those things are things that are going to trigger you, if any topic that you think I might mention in this is something that is going to make you very uncomfortable and trigger you in any way, then please do skip this video, and I guess look in my old true crime cases to find one that's more up your street, because I don't know when my next new case will be. I'm going to go straight into things because I've already rambled the intro far too long. So yeah, in Northern Ireland, until very recently, abortion was only allowed if the woman's life was at risk, or there was a risk of permanent damage to a woman's mental health or physical health. Irish women who needed to terminate a pregnancy would need to travel to England to do so. This Sarah had actually been pro-life. A week after her scan, Sarah travelled to England for her termination. She spoke out in Irish court and became the face of the Northern Irish campaign to have the law changed. Sarah was able to get her termination and she survived. Our next woman was unfortunately not so lucky. On October the 21st, 2012, 31-year-old Savita Halapanava arrived at Galway Hospital. She was 17 weeks pregnant with her first baby. Savita was born in India and had trained as a dentist. Her husband Praveen was living in Galway when the two met and married, and Savita had actually moved over to Ireland in July 2008. I could write all about Savita and Praveen and their lives together, but I'm just going to be unfortunately focusing on the events after she was admitted to hospital. When Savita first arrived at the hospital, she was complaining of pain in her lower back. Initially, she was discharged with no diagnosis. However, she returned complaining of a sensation of something coming down. She was examined and it was found she had a dilated cervix and the mucous membrane was bulging. It was determined that a miscarriage was unavoidable and she was admitted for observation. Standard practice in this type of situation was to watch and wait with no intervention unless deemed necessary. Savita had bloods taken and these showed an elevated white cell count. This result wasn't actually noted on her charts, so signs of an infection could be brewing were missed. She was given a single room and was described as not appearing unwell, with her pain level being normal for someone who was suffering a miscarriage. At 12:30 a.m, Savita's call bell was activated. Midwives found Savita in the bathroom having been sick. The amniotic sac had been ruptured and, as far as doctors were concerned, the miscarriage process was underway. Savita was made comfortable and doctors confirmed she was not in pain. However, she had a very fitful night's sleep. The next morning, Savita's vitals were taken and they were found to be normal. Later that morning, Savita met with Dr. Asprey for the first time. She recommended Savita be given an ultrasound to check for a fetal heartbeat. The reason for this being, if she was left with a dead fetus, this would be an infection risk, and this doctor was unaware that she already had signs of infection. No repeat blood tests were ordered, but it was decided that Savita should be given an antibiotic called erythromycin as a preventative measure due to the ruptured membrane being an opening for bacteria. The medical team were not aware that Savita already had an infection that was resistant to these types of antibiotics. The Tuesday morning, which was October the 23rd, Savita and her husband again met with the consultant, who explained the need to monitor the fetus's heartbeat. Savita and her husband were understandably upset and they asked what medically could be done to induce a miscarriage. The consultant explained that under Irish law they couldn't do anything unless there was a threat to Savita's life. Had the consultant been aware of Savita's elevated white cell count, she could have actually terminated the pregnancy at this point. Controversially, at this point as well, one of the midwives made a comment to Savita and her husband along the lines of, "We don't do that, dear, it's a Catholic thing." Later that night, during her routine observations, a student realised that Savita's vitals were abnormal. She had a pulse of 114 beats per minute, and an elevated pulse is one of the early signs of sepsis. There is some confusion over what happened next, with the student midwife claiming that they did page the senior house officer to make them aware of the elevated pulse. The senior house officer claimed they were not aware of this. At this point, Savita had 2 of the 4 signs of sepsis. Later that night, vitals were taken again and she complained of a feeling of weakness. Her heart rate was also still high. The senior house officer did not see Savita until around 1 a.m. At this point, Savita was sleeping and he decided not to wake her. At 4 a.m, a midwife was called to the room by Savita's husband, who said he thought Savita was cold and asked for some extra blankets due to the radiator in the room being cold and Savita's teeth were chattering. The nurse took her temperature and it was 37.7 degrees. These temperatures are in degrees Celsius, by the way, not Fahrenheit. Savita was developing a fever, sign 3 of 4 of sepsis. No other vitals were taken at this point, in spite of medical guidance stating that all vitals should be recorded every 4 hours in cases of miscarriage. At this point it had been 9 hours. She was given paracetamol to help with the fever. At 4 a.m, Savita began vomiting. Her temperature was taken again at 5 a.m, but no other vitals were recorded. At this time, her temperature was 37.5, so it was like borderline fever. At 6:30, during the midwife's regular rounds, Savita complained of weakness and body aches. Her vitals were taken and her fever was 39.6 and her heart rate was 160 beats per minute. Her blood pressure had also dropped. The senior house officer was called and came immediately. He ordered a range of blood tests and cultures as staff now realised that she had an infection. Unfortunately, due to the nature of these tests, the results would not be available for 48 hours. Doctors also noticed a foul-smelling discharge on the postpartum pad, and this was diagnosed as possible chorioamnionitis, I hope I'm saying that right, an inflammation of the fetal membrane due to infection. From this point, Savita deteriorated rapidly. The discharge on the pad also wasn't noted on Savita's charts. The senior house doctor prescribed co-amoxiclav, which is what I had after my boob job, and the specialist registrar was informed. The next morning, Dr. Astbury saw Savita and put her on metronidazole, another antibiotic, due to her abnormal vitals. She also informed Savita of the possibility that they would terminate the pregnancy, but there was still a fetal heartbeat. Had that discharge been noted anywhere, Dr. Astbury would have commenced a termination, but it wasn't, so she didn't. From this point, Savita began to deteriorate rapidly. At this point, doctors realised they were dealing with a severe infection and commenced the termination as Savita was struggling to breathe. She was given 2 new antibiotics at this point as well. During the night, Savita stayed in urgent care and was at this point suffering severe septic shock and multiple organ failure. The cultures were returned from the lab and showed she was suffering with E. coli ESBL septicemia, very rare and resistant to most antibiotics, not an infection that doctors would expect in a young, healthy woman. Doctors were able to start the appropriate treatment, but it was too little, too late, and on Sunday the 28th of October at 1:09 a.m, Savita died from multiple organ failure due to the infection at the age of 31, a week after she was admitted into the hospital. In Nicaragua, abortion is illegal. No exceptions are made for the mother's life being at risk. Previous to this ban, abortions could only be performed if 3 doctors all agreed there was no other option and the mother's life was at risk. Hemorrhaging tends to be the most common cause of deaths in pregnant women in Nicaragua. In 2006, law student Olga Reyes was one of them. Olga had been married for just 2 weeks. She went into hospital with her. Well, she went into her town's medical centre with her husband was given an examination and sent home, but told to return the next day. By the time she returned to the hospital, she was bleeding profusely. Her husband rushed her to hospital in Lyon, who gave her an ultrasound which confirmed the pregnancy was ectopic. I can never say that correctly. I think that's correctly. The fertilised egg had actually implanted outside of the womb. After this, though, Reyes was left bent over in agony for hours in a waiting room, bleeding out. At shift changeover, a doctor realised how serious her condition was, and she was rushed into surgery. But it was too late. She suffered 3 heart attacks and died at the age of 22. Outlawing abortion puts the lives of women at greater risk. It also makes those desperate for a termination to seek extreme and unsafe measures. By making abortion illegal, you are making safe abortion illegal. You're making safe abortion illegal. Some of the methods unlicensed abortionists or even desperate women themselves will resort to end the pregnancy include breaking the amniotic sac using a sharp object. This often leads to infection or injury to internal organs, such as piercing the uterus or intestines, resulting in death. Another method involves pumping toxic mixtures containing chili peppers, alum, Lysol, and permanganate into a woman's body. The woman could go into toxic shock and die from this. I say women a lot in this. I mean pregnant person, but in most of these cases, it's people who identify as female. Another common method, which is actually one used very commonly in Brazil, is to take substances that are known I wrote this word and now I don't know how to pronounce it. Abortifacient, I think. Drugs such as oxytocin and ergot alkaloids. These drugs can cause uterine ruptures, rising or falling blood pressure, anemia, blood clots, and cardiovascular issues. As you can see, outlawing abortion puts so many people's lives at risk. When abortions were illegal, you had serial killers such as Amelia Dyer, who I have covered on my channel, who would buy people's babies and say she was going to give them a new life and then strangle them and dump their bodies in canals. Rillington Place, John Christie, is a true crime that I have wanted to cover for ages on my channel. I've just never had the time to dedicate to doing it properly because it's such an intricate case. John Christie set himself up as a backstreet abortionist, and he would gas the women who came to him with carbon monoxide gas before raping their dead bodies, and then burying them in his yard or under his property. There are so many other backstreet abortionist murderers. There's like a famous case of an American socialite whose name totally escapes me right now, who vanished and has never been found, and one of the theories is that she died seeking an abortion through one of these like hospitals that would offer you like a dodgy backstreet abortion. I'm saying the word like too much. And that she died and they just disposed of her body in a trash heap because that's what would happen back then. Anyway, like I said, I felt like as a true crime creator and as someone who has a child who can get pregnant, who doesn't particularly want more children, it was important for me to speak on this topic. There's a lot of true crime creators who have chosen not to speak about this for whatever reason, but I wanted to. I know that today's topic has been a lot deeper, a lot more more serious, perhaps. Maybe not more serious because I'm talking about murder a lot of the time, but you know what I mean. It's been a lot deeper and a lot harder to stomach, perhaps, than a lot of the cases that I normally cover. But I hope I've educated and informed you, and I hope that the US fucking sorts itself out. Like, what's going on? You care more about a fetus than you do about the children who are going to school and then becoming victims of gun crime. Like, Jesus Christ. And I know, like, the majority of my audience is based in the US as well, when I look at my analytics. So if you are a viewer of this content and you are in the US and you are a person who menstruates or a person